Okay, this is a very basic two-stroke engine block. This was donated to our shop by a student. He built this little model with a little help from his dad. This was a model for a science project. This is basically like a small chainsaw or string trimmer motor. Pretty nice when your dad has access to machine shop services. Okay, so I'm spinning the crankshaft from this side. Here's your piston. Notice that on your two-stroke engine that your cylinder head and your block are actually all one piece. That's pretty common on these small engines. This whole thing right here is actually referred to as a jug because if you tip it upside down, it's kind of like a cup. Okay. Spark plug here, obviously, and other things. Well, you can see crankcase down in there, and if we look on this side, and I hope the lighting is good enough, this is actually where your carburetor, you would have a reed plate right here, and a reed plate is basically just a little sandwich plate with a reed valve in it, and then your carburetor would bolt on here, and what you can see is that this runner actually leads down to the crankcase. Now my finger won't fit all the way down there to prove it to you. You're gonna have to trust me on that. Well, maybe there, maybe you can see my finger in there. Okay, as long as my finger gets out again, and it did. Okay, so there's your piston connecting rod. You can barely see it right under there, and then if you're watching this thing when it turns, you can actually see the counterweight for the crankshaft spinning around in there. The counterweight, smooths the firing strokes, but it also provides momentum because during the upward movement of the piston, there needs to be some sort of force to shove that piston through that stage, right? If your engine doesn't have enough running momentum, then the piston it'll be partway through a compression stage here, and the compression energy, it's resisting the movement of the piston. It'll slow the piston down so much it might stall the motor. So you have a counterweight on the crankshaft that kind of, once it's gotten spinning, it has momentum. Okay, it's a law of physics. Bodies in motion tend to stay in motion. That's a law of physics. Okay, what that means is once something is moving, its natural tendency is to stay moving unless something makes it stop. Okay, the other side of that is the other law of physics. Well, there's lots of laws of physics, but another one is that bodies at rest tend to stay at rest. Okay, sometimes I think of certain students when I hear that law, because basically what that means is that things that are sitting there tend to sit there unless something makes them move. There, you can do with that what you wish. Anyways, here's the movement of your piston, your connecting rod, your crankshaft, your counterweight. Like I say, this is your carburetor reed valve and your intake runner here. Now, if we spin this motor around, you can see some red paint in here. I think this student got into his mom's fingernail polish actually, because that's not really red. That's like some sort of, I don't know, fuchsia, magenta, I don't know. It's fingernail polish. This is your exhaust, okay? And I'm going to spin the crankshaft again, and can you guys see through there that the piston is actually going by? In fact, because the other half of the cylinder is cut off, you can see my hand moving through there. You can see right through the cylinder. Okay, so there's your exhaust port, and in this case, the exhaust port, it's all one port. It's got a little web in the middle here to stiffen that part of the motor. It makes it look like it's two ports. It's, well, whatever, you can call it two ports if you want. It's one wide port, and then what would bolt on right here is the beginning of your exhaust system. And what else do we need to know? Well, that's a pretty good start. Okay. Oh, I know what else we need to know. Let's get down to the bottom here. Okay, this might be tricky based on lighting. There's some more fingernail polish that got used. Down in here, you can see two grooves or slots cut into the side of the cylinder, and they've been colored blue. And over on that side there's 2 more, and they're colored blue. So if you look at the shape of the cylinder here, notice that there's some extra width over here and there's some extra width over here. Basically those 2 ports, they're like runners. They run up beside the cylinder on both sides, and then they enter into the cylinder. So alright, let's see if we can make this happen. Let me reset. Okay, so if you watch the first series of videos with my nice Sharpie magic marker drawings, Sharpie is not a sponsor. Sharpie is just like a universally handy tool. Here goes the piston moving upwards. Okay, closing off the intake ports right there and right there, blocking off the intake ports so that there is no longer any exchange between the crankcase and the cylinder. Notice you can still see through the top of the piston where the exhaust ports are still partially revealed. Piston keeps going, covers up the exhaust ports. Okay, now you have a fully captured batch of air-fuel mixture up here, and it's about to be compressed. And then at the same time, because the piston's going up, you have a vacuum being created down here, which is intake. And this crankcase, on my drawing I showed the carburetor coming off down over here, right? And I did explain in that video that the carburetor placement is going to be in different locations for different engine designs, and this is your proof. Okay, in this case, here's your carburetor will be sitting over here, and your air fuel mixture is going to run in right there. So piston's going up, right? This is the upstroke of the piston. You got compression going on here. You've got a vacuum being created down below, which causes an intake event. So compression event, intake event. Keep going, get to top dead center, spark plug fires, and piston is driven down by the movement of, or by the exploding air fuel mixture energy. So you've got a very high pressure here. Piston is moving back towards the crankcase, which means that whole area down there is under pressure now. It's starting to be pressurized because it's starting to have a compression event in there. And remember that you're going to have oil mixed with your fuel. So when that batch of fuel air mixture went in there, it also coated the bearings inside there with a thin film of oil vapor. That's where your lubrication is coming from. Let's keep going here. And as we get further down the stroke, the pressure here is starting to finish its job. The pressure in here is starting to get seriously fairly high, right? And then the piston reveals the exhaust ports. And I hope the camera pictures that okay. And so as soon as the exhaust ports are revealed, the burning air fuel mixture in here has a path to escape. Because again, this rule applies over and over and over. Areas of high pressure always try to move to areas of low pressure. Well, the atmosphere around the motor is a much lower pressure than the combustion pressure in the cylinder. You just let off a small explosion in here. You have a great deal of pressure in here. So as soon as the exhaust ports are revealed, whoosh, out goes the exhaust, rushing out to the exhaust system. And notice that at the same time, in here and in there, your intake runners, the intake ports are revealed, and this crankcase area was high pressure because the piston moved all the way down there and compressed it. Areas of high pressure move to areas of low pressure, or they try to. And so as soon as the piston reveals those ports, the air fuel mixture from the crankcase runs up the left side, runs up the right side, up into the cylinder, okay? And then the piston starts to go back up again because the counterweight on the flywheel keeps it spinning, and the piston goes back up, closes the intake ports, alright, and then closes the exhaust port, and we have the whole series of events start over again. We have another compression event, another intake event, we have another power event, another compression event, we have exhaust, we have an intake event up into here, we finish the compression. Well, the compression here kind of dies because it moves up to the cylinder. Now we have a compression event, intake event. We have a power event and the beginning of a compression event. Compression event is happening, power event's happening, exhaust event, and intake event to the cylinder because this pressurized stuff mixture goes up through the sides of the motor, and on and on and on it goes. Okay, that's basically it in a nutshell. Okay, you can see on the outside of the engine, by the way, that you have all these little cooling fins. I mentioned in the other video that two-stroke engines get extremely hot. Four-stroke engines get hot too, but two-stroke engines, oh my word, they have twice as many power strokes per revolution of the crankshaft as a four-stroke engine. So your fins are basically wicking away the heat. All right, the metal absorbs the heat from the cylinder, and the air naturally, the temperature moves out to the outside of the fins. The air going by absorbs that heat and tries to reduce the heat. Well, it does. It reduces the heat of the motor. So these fins are incredibly important. If you got a two-stroke dirt bike, for example, it relies on the speed of the vehicle, the speed of your bike, to actually get air to rush through here. So it's not a good idea to leave a two-stroke engine idling unless it has a fan to blow air over it, because if it's not a fan-cooled motor, then the only thing that cools these fins is the movement of the machine. And so if you're off riding around in the fields and in the bush, and then you know, stop for a pee or whatever, not a good idea to leave the motor idling. It's going to overheat. You could, cause damage, and I'm going to show that in